It's okay.
Okay. Bonnie, do you see the pathable stuff? Bonnie?
Not yet.
This isn't good for me.
All you have to focus on is presenting. I'll take care of the path.
No, I mean, the fact that I can't see my notes. You know, usually I would have, if I knew that there was a problem, I would have copied them. And what
Can you just share? People can hear us now. We're presenting, just so you know.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a second here. A little tech difficulty. Ooh, good morning from Seattle. Nice. Welcome. Yeah, if you want to throw in the notes where you're coming in from. Hey, someone from California, Oregon. Welcome, everyone.
No, that's what you're saying, right?
We're going to get started in just a second here. Alexis has a lot of good stuff to share about healthy food access. Hope you've come with some questions. We'll have a couple times to stop throughout the program and get your questions. And this slide has a lot of good resources in it for you to bring home and follow up with afterwards. So welcome, everyone.
So yeah, and I'll just say, as far as our technical difficulties, everyone, we're not able to get the slideshow in the proper configuration. So I apologize if it looks a little funky on your screen and you're kind of seeing things that you normally wouldn't see in a slideshow. So I apologize for that. So what does it look like, Bonnie? Do you have a number of people in?
Yeah, folks are coming in. We've got, we're ready for you to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, why don't we get going? Hi, I'm Alexis Alexander, and our presentation is Healthy Food Access Starts Now. I work with the Neighboring Food Co-op Association as their peer collaboration and technical assistant. And Bonnie Hudspeth from NFCA is also with us today. And Bonnie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, glad to be here. I lead cooperative development with the Neighboring Food Co-op Association and was once a startup organizer just like y'all about 10 years ago. So glad to have you here.
Okay, thanks, Bonnie. Now, Bonnie's going to be monitoring our chat today. And so please, throughout the presentation, if you have questions, please throw them into chat. And Bonnie will help us answering those questions, or she'll throw the question back to me. There'll be a few places during the session where we'll be able to stop and do some actual question and answering through the chat as well. So let's get started. And okay, so this is not actually letting me change the slide.
Maybe just go to start show or something under slideshow. Play from start.
Yeah, there isn't a start show thing on my.
If you would go to slideshow, it says play from start is a drop down.
Oh, play from, I got it.
Yeah.
Great. Now let's see if that works. Oh, thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah, no worries.
So anyway, okay, so what to expect from this session? We're going to be building a deeper understanding of how to build a welcoming co-op and successful healthy food access programming. To learn why incorporating this work into your co-op's planning process and developing key community partnerships as early as possible helps to maximize your success, and to walk away with a foundational model for ongoing justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts and resources for creating successful healthy food access programs. During the presentation, I'll be using the acronyms HFA and JEDI for healthy food access and justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And before we actually get into our material today, there was a poll that I don't know if you folks have taken already or not. So if you want to go into your Pathable site where it has the poll, if you want to complete that, it just gives us a barometer of where you are in your startup process. So, and Bonnie, are you able to see that poll?
Yep.
Great. So why don't we look to see at the results and can we see the results at this point?
Not yet.
Okay, so why don't I move on to the next slide then, and once that comes up, then we can go from there.
Oh, Sally at Pathable Support here. People can't see the poll, but it's okay. We'll circle back.
Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so why healthy food access starts now? That's the big question, right? So healthy food access is more than just what a lot of people think of, which is like a needs-based low-income discount program, right? It's really about people coming into our stores and feeling that they can shop there comfortably and safely, and that they really have a sense of belonging. And it's not just about shopping. It's also about membership and having membership be accessible, and about empowerment of our members to actually participate in the governance of the co-op. So at its core, healthy food access really is about offering food security and being welcoming to all, so they can have those levels of participation and feel like they belong. And it needs to be ingrained in our strategic visioning and mission and in all we do. Jessica Gordon-Nemhard stated it really well in terms of the offering food security and why co-ops play such an important role. And she talked about how through history, co-op movements have sprung up in response to need. And there's a continuous thread of cooperative activity and development among African Americans over the past 200 years and more. And it really comes out of need and strategy. And it's so cool to see how co-ops have often been a tool towards the elimination of economic exploitation and transition to a new economic social order. And if we know that like mutual aid and cooperation has existed for centuries, right? If we hone in on just like the past about 175 years, we see the kind of the waves of food co-ops that have existed, food security was really at the heart of those movements. You know, starting with the Industrial Revolution of the 1840s into the Great Depression. And what we really see is that the movements really ran across demographic groups. So during the Depression, we saw co-ops opening up in cities like Buffalo with the Citizens Cooperative Grocery Market, and the Pure Food Co-op in Harlem that resided in communities of color and really serving the Black community in those cities. At the same time, we were seeing co-ops opening up in rural states like New Hampshire and Vermont. And so here's a picture of Hanover Food Co-op that is actually still with us today, that opened in 1936 in response to the Depression. And as we move forward, you know, the 60s, another time, right? A huge wave with civil rights and the Back to the Land movement. But But it wasn't just food co-ops, grocery stores that were opening up in response to food security. There was also a lot of other co-ops, like farmers co-ops, and organizations like the Federation of Southern Cooperatives in the South that works to this very day to secure land retention and build wealth for Black farmers in response to the farmer crisis that happened during the 60s and 70s. I don't know if anyone remembers the march, the tractor march on Washington, but that was a big issue for those movements. And then in 2008 with the Great Recession, and that's what a lot of your co-ops are springing from, right? In terms of the food insecurity that really rose out of that recession. And what we see now is that food insecurity that had reached a high of about 14%, and then it moved down until 2019. And now it's back on the rise again with COVID. And what we always see with food insecurity is that some households are more likely to struggle than others. Rural households with children, women, headed households, people of color, trans and gender non-conforming, incarcerated individuals, people with disabilities always struggle more than the white population. And we really see this disparity well if we look at food insecurity across races. So in 2019, before COVID, while we had gotten down to a 10.9% food insecurity overall, we can see that for Latino and Black and Native American peoples, food insecurity was much higher. 1 out of 4 Native people were food insecure sometime in 2019. And we know that those numbers are actually worse with COVID. So one of the imperatives for our food co-ops in terms of ending food security is to be welcoming to all the different people who live in our communities and are food insecure. And it's beautiful for co-ops to be that place that can help to resolve some of the food insecurity issues because it's embedded in our cooperative principles, such as the first cooperative principle that, being open to all people without discrimination. And that phrase, without discrimination, is particularly telling because it really gives us a moral imperative to act when there are serious times of food insecurity, to make sure that everyone in our community can come into our co-ops, feel welcome, and be able to get the food that they want. So when we talk about how to build a welcoming co-op, one thing I like to look at is the evolution of the acronyms over time that we've been using for the past decade around the issues of diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice. And the reason why I like to look at these acronyms and really consider it is it shows kind of how we've evolved over time in our understanding of what it means to be welcoming. Back in, and LaDonna touched on this a bit today in her discussion, like back in 2011, when I was at Green Star Food Co-op and we were starting a diversity initiative, the word diversity is what people were really using. But we know that diversity really means that we're just opening our doors to everyone. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are feeling included. And so we saw a few years later, people really talking more about diversity and inclusion and bringing people in. And it's like that old kind of saying of, you're invited to the party with diversity, but you may not be asked to dance, right? So with inclusion, we're doing things to make people feel like they're included and that they belong. And we went a few years with, using that as the major phrase that was being used to describe these initiatives. But then the word equity came into the equation. And when we look at equity, we're really thinking about the fact that while we might include people and give people opportunities to engage, to get to where people want to be, they might need a different path to get there. And I think staff is a great example in our co-ops on what diversity, equity, and inclusion means. Because let's say we have two staff people, right? And they both want to become, they're non-management, and they both want to become a manager. Based on their background, you know, maybe their innate skills, their educational background, the opportunities that were afforded to them when they were younger, and now, maybe to get to that managerial position, they might need different kinds of training in order to get there. And that's what, to me, equity really means, is that we're providing each individual person a way to get to where they want to be. And lastly is justice. And with justice, I really think about the word accountability. So making sure that when things happen, people are, and maybe in times when things go awry, right? People are held accountable for their actions. You know, having policies in place that allow us to treat people fairly and justly with proper accountability. And I've heard recently that Mariposa Co-op in Philadelphia has a no assumption policy around gender and pronouns and stuff. And that's the type of policy that allows a co-op to actually deal with situations when someone is misgendering, and having a policy in place where you can treat everyone consistently and fairly and hold people who might be resisting proper gendering, hold them to account. So this brings us back to the question of why healthy food access now? And it's because being welcoming to everyone can only be achieved if the principles of JEDI are embedded in everything we do. Our vision, our mission, our ends, our policies, procedures, and practices, and at all levels within the organization, our board, our staff, and our members. And then bringing that message out into the community so that people know what it is we believe in, what it is that we're doing, and how we are holding, everyone in our co-op in a just and fair manner. So what does a welcoming co-op actually look like? Well, here are some things that we can look at. So members, staff, board, and customers, the demographics being reflective of the community, a well-trained staff and board on things like implicit bias, intercultural development, and the whole array of anti-racism trainings that are available, trainings on gender identity, sexual orientation, affordable options across product lines and membership, culturally inclusive products, physical and social accessibility, a broad range of engagement and communication activities, and vehicles to ensure that we're all aware of and can participate and be included in the co-op. And with all of this, and highlighted in blue because it's so important, continual assessment and willingness to adjust. Because our awareness is changing all the time. And fortunately, our awareness has been growing as of late, right? Which means we continually have to assess where we're at as co-ops and be willing to adjust what we have in place to meet the needs of the community at the present time and going into the future. And what I'm curious about right now is what's missing from the slide. So I'd love folks to put in the chat, the things that maybe they're thinking of, that what a welcoming co-op looks like to them. And Bonnie, if you want to read out some of the things that people are saying, that would be great.
Sure. I just put the prompt in, so we'll wait. What did we miss? JQ didn't see anything missing. Oh, various languages, including sign language and staff.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
Signage and art that reflect our underrepresented communities.
Mhm.
What else you got? Startup collective brain.
Great. Well, why don't people keep, if you think of stuff, just add them into the chat because we'll be able to look at that afterwards. Thanks so much. Those were great additions for us to add to our slides in the future. So the next question is, how do we get there? How do we build this welcoming co-op that's really just and fair? Well, one of the things that I learned over time, and a lot of people I think have learned over time, is that it's really through strong community partnerships that we can really grow our co-ops and to be willing to grow our Jedi knowledge and our skills. So I'll tell you a little story about when I was at Green Star. I was the membership manager there. And in about my second year, we were approached by a member of the co-op who was very, very frustrated at what he saw as Green Star not living up to our principles and not being good stewards of diversity and inclusion in our community. And so what he did is he called a meeting and he pulled together a lot of leaders in our community, leaders of color and white allies. And he was a white ally himself. And then he invited Green Star to the meeting. And 5 of us went to the meeting, and it was our GM and board president, our HR manager, our marketing manager, and myself as membership manager. And we had a 2-hour meeting, and it was fabulous. It was very hard. There were a lot of criticisms about the co-op, but at the same time, there was a real concern and a real desire for the leaders to see Green Star be better. And about halfway through the meeting, our GM stepped up and said, you know, it's obvious that we need a culture change in our co-op, but we don't know how to do it. And would you be willing to help us? And it was such a humbling moment. And what was beautiful is that everyone around the table said, yes, we want to help Green Star to get better. And we established this wonderful committee, essentially, of what we called endearingly our key critics. And they helped us to assess our strengths and weaknesses and brainstormed how our co-op can be more welcoming to the community at large. And then we met quarterly and we shared with them all kinds of things, and we monitored our progress and revised our decision-making, our practices, our procedures and materials on all levels of the co-op in order to become a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive co-op. And this is something that I would really recommend to you as startups, and that I'm actually really envious of, because you can start this right from the beginning of your co-ops and really reach out to the leaders in your area and develop these community partnerships. And sometimes it's a challenge and hard to do. And if you find any resistance, you know, look for the allies to the co-op who are also allies to the various organizations within your community, and ask them to help and tell them what your goal is. And I think one of the critical things to put forward is that you're asking for people's help and for community leaders to be your guide, but the co-op is the one who does the work. So you're not asking the community partners to do the work for you. You're helping them to guide you through the process. So the input that we got was invaluable on so many levels. And here are just some of the things that we did. You know, we developed a diversity and inclusion statement and an anti-racism statement that went up in our stores. We developed more inclusive HR materials. We took the felony box out of our application. We added a diversity and inclusion question into the job application. We shared job postings with our community partners so that they can send it out to their folks. So we had a broader reach within the community. While the board wasn't involved at this level, if you were to take on this work, you can use it for board recruitment strategies, board onboarding. We did a lot of diversity event partnering, and we put a lot of our advertising dollars into outreach. And then another thing that you can use it for is culturally relevant products and merchandising to find out what you should be carrying in the store. We didn't do that in our co-op, but I want to do a shout out to a startup co-op, Alphabet Co-op Market, because they right now have a survey going out to their community partners. And it's all on about shopping habits and the needs of the community and what they want to see in the co-op, and even about values and stuff around the co-op. And they've given this survey out to their community partners, who are then putting it out to their clientele base and the people that they serve, so that if the reach of this could go to exactly who Alphabet wants to go, the broader community that they might not be able to reach on their own. So a great use of community partnerships. And there are a lot of positive impacts that come out of this work, right? It increases staff and board morale and diversification. It leads to positive sales growth and a healthy bottom line, and it allows a co-op to increase their benefit to members. And it enhances community engagement and reputation. One of the things that was really heartwarming when we did this work is there were people of color who had been members of the co-op who were no longer members of the co-op because of what they saw they saw our practices really lacking. There were white people who left the co-op because they did not think we were being inclusive enough. And there were people who stayed on with the co-op. And what we found is that people who had left had come back, and people who had stayed with us came to us and said, it is so great to see staff from the neighborhood. Because what had happened with Green Star is, because we have 2 universities, although we were hiring staff of color, a lot of them came actually from out of town through the university system. But we weren't necessarily hiring local people who grew up, born and raised in Ithaca. And the difference of the community partnership allowed us to actually give people who are living in the community kind of full-time opportunities within the co-op. And we had a lot of Black members just come to us, very grateful that Green Star had made this step. As I mentioned before, the board strategies that I had on that list weren't something that we were working on at that time. Because while the board was supporting the work, they weren't actually involved in diversity and inclusion work themselves. Our staff was getting a lot of training on a lot of different aspects of diversity and inclusion, but the board wasn't doing that work until 2016, when the board elected the first female and Black board president. And she ran on a platform of diversifying the board and getting the board involved more actively, shall I say, in diversity and inclusion efforts. And what she found is, she was going back through old literature from the board, and she found that in the 1990s, there had been a dictate for the board to set up a board diversity and inclusion committee. And that never happened over more than 40 years. And so she established that right away. And her goal was to establish a structural foundation for ongoing diversity and inclusion efforts in co-ops. And she and I talked in 2019, and she shared to me what her vision had been and how it evolved for her. And basically what she said is seen in this concentric circle, where the board is in the middle and it is driving everything, and everything comes out through the board: vision, mission, ends. And then that there's a board committee, like we had just established, that helps carry out the day-to-day activity of diversity of inclusion on the board level. Well, that committee actually had members at large and staff members on it. And the staff members recognized that there was a place for a similar kind of committee on the operational level. And so we started an operational diversity and inclusion committee. And so that was also a key component of the vision. And then lastly is having the community partners in a community diversity and inclusion committee. So it was ironic that we kind of started it opposite, because we started our initiative with the community, but really it emanates from the, or it should emanate from the board going outward, with the community then reflecting back and giving us feedback on what else needs to happen. And Patrice Locker-Anthony, who is the woman who was elected president, said to me that synergy is created when the board takes on its role and responsibility for leading and guiding the organization and joins in partnership with the general manager and its staff to meet owner and community needs. And this really hit me hard, because while our GM had the support of the board, he could only go so far in his actions because the board wasn't involved in their own work. And so once the board became involved in their own work, that could open up opportunity to do even more with diversity, equity, and inclusion in our co-op. So let's take a look at some of the things that were happening at the board level to become a more welcoming board. Okay, so basically, it's to develop a JEDI awareness and skill set and to get everyone literally on board. And so that people could acknowledge, you know, what the challenges are, where the co-op needs to grow, so that we could make the necessary changes. It's to align the strategic vision, ends, and expectations so they're all inclusive. And to do ongoing trainings for board members on leadership skills, microaggressions, things like gender awareness, anti-bias, and all the different realms of diversity and inclusion. And so the board engaging at this level and increasing their awareness helps to bring our vision and mission and ends and change them over time to be reflective of what's needed to meet our community needs. So one idea that I'll throw out there, there's this great organization called Food Solutions New England that you can Google and find. They do a 21-day racial equity challenge. So one of the types of things that some of the boards are doing in our region is actually taking that challenge together. It happens every May. They have a great website with a lot of materials that, you know, you don't really have to take the 21-day challenge per se, but you can use materials like that to create your own challenge within the board. So that's one kind of thing. Now, if we look at the board JEDI committee, what they were doing was ensuring the JEDI is at the foundation of all board policies and activities. They helped to facilitate recruitment for board and at-large committees, so our board could also be more representative of the community at large. So, and they helped to improve the board's understanding of inequality and discrimination to inform policy. What I really liked about our committee is because it included members at large and staff, they actually got involved in some of the trainings and actually led some of the trainings. So it was really kind of a very nice cohesive bonding of board, staff, and members all working together to strengthen the understanding of diversity and inclusion at the board level. And another thing that can help to really establish a baseline of board's diversity awareness is to do a cultural communication survey. So you kind of see where you're at now and where you need to go to in the future. So this is a very dense page, and there are going to be a few of these throughout the rest of the presentation. And we're not going to spend time on this page, But I really wanted this slide deck to be a resource for you going forward, because you will have access to the slide deck. So these are just some examples of a mission statement from Urban Greens, an end statement from Franklin Community Co-op. They are really, I have to give a shout out to them as well, because they're really going through their documents and things right now to bring everything more into a JEDI kind of format, to make sure their ends reflect their JEDI mission, you know, their policies, their procedures. So they're kind of a good role model in this work right now. The B policy is not from any particular co-op, but you know, B policies are used by co-ops that are using policy governance. And I don't know if all of your co-ops will be using policy governance as your form of governance, but basically B policies are the policies that hold the GM accountable for their work. Okay, so making sure whatever you're using in terms of policies to hold your GM accountable reflects those goals that the board has for the co-op in regarding JEDI. So especially where staff is concerned, right? Making sure that you're operating with a plan to ensure diversity of staff at all levels within the organization, to make sure there's equitable access and opportunity for advancement. I think this is one of the areas I see challenging co-ops the most, is that they're able to diversify at lower levels within the staff ranks, non-management, but are having a harder time sometimes with some co-ops really promoting people up into the higher levels of management. So that's a thought that you might want to think of as you're developing your co-ops, is how will we ensure that we get a diverse amount of staff at all levels within the organization. And then I wanted to share with you our diversity and anti-racism statement that we developed at Green Star Food Co-op. They were community partner approved statements, so vetted, and they gave us some good ideas of what those statements should be. And lastly, in terms of the JEDI framework and that model, is the operational JEDI committee. And ours was really involved in recommending policies and procedures and product lines that impact workplace culture and increase organizational diversity, equity, and inclusion. One thing they did was a WIC proposal. We were not carrying WIC items, and our product line actually didn't allow us to carry a lot of the items on WIC. So they did a proposal and presented it to our board, and we actually made changes in the product line policy so that we could broaden our offerings to allow WIC in the future. And they came to me as membership manager about the fact that at the register, when you pulled up a membership, it was the person's legal name. And it was because of some aspects of our back-end database that we did it that way. And they're like, you know, this is really bad. We really need to be able to have people's chosen names so that we can honor people who do not use their given name. And so, you know, we looked back and we realized that even though it was going to create administrative inefficiencies in our back end, it was more important that at the registers that we were able to talk to people knowing their chosen name and to not have their legal names mentioned at the register. So we actually made that change. And it was wonderful because I didn't realize how many people had not joined the co-op because they were uncomfortable about having to use their legal name and having that shown at the register. So now we collect both chosen and legal names. And that really came out of the workings of this committee. They also, you know, provided feedback on all sorts of initiatives. They do a staff of color retreat each year, monthly staff educational communications on different aspects of diversity and inclusion. They also do things on honoring holidays that are served across various ethnic and religious groups. They established a transgender celebration team. And one of my favorite things they did was an International Pronoun Day. That is done now, right? around the world, and we were involved in the first inaugural year in 2018, and they put out a table with all kinds of literature for people and had cookies with pronouns on it, so people could choose the pronoun of their choice and honor it through the cookie. It was really fun. People really loved that a lot. So this is another dense page. It's meant to be a resource page with just a lot of different ideas for you. And it's only a snippet of what can be done in terms of JEDI initiatives and engagement with community partners. One of the things on here that I wanted to just mention is that we had done, partnered with a local activities center and a local soup kitchen to show the 3-part documentary, Race and Power of Illusion. And what we did is we had the staff from the 3 organizations come together for a meal, watch a segment of the documentary, and then have a discussion. And we did this over 3 different nights. And it was a great way for the staff of like-minded organizations who were all working towards diversity and inclusion to come together and bond and meet each other and form new relationships. So things like that are really, really constructive to do. You know, book reads, land acknowledgements, lots of different trainings. If you ever have the opportunity in your community to have the People's Institute come in and do their Undoing Racism workshop, I highly recommended it. It's really excellent. So at this point, we're actually going to shift gears and we're going to talk now about building food security for those facing financial hardship. But before we do that, I'd like to take a few minutes for us to just maybe talk a little bit through chat on what we just heard about developing a welcoming co-op. So I'm wondering if anyone has any questions, needs any clarifications on anything that we've talked so far.
I don't see questions so far, just feedback. Feedback on some of the initiatives you shared and a couple technical things like accessing closed captioning that I'm trying to get to the bottom of. If anyone else knows and can help each other in the chat, that would be great. Any other questions based off of the information? Nancy had asked a question about what does B policy mean in how you spread it down, and I shared that it's referring to a specific policy in a policy document when your board is using policy governance. Oh, Warren asked, what is FSNE 21-day challenge?
Okay, so the 21-day challenge is literally you sign up for it on the internet, and for that 21-day period, every day you get an email that has a whole bunch of resources on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It might be some video clips, articles, just a whole swath of resources for you to look at. It takes a lot more than 10 to 15 minutes to look through everything they give you, but the whole goal is to just take 10 to 15 minutes of your time each day and just review some of the resources and build your JEDI awareness and knowledge and skill set. And it's cool because at the end of each week, they'll send you an email on Sundays that has all the resources that they sent you during the week. And so you just build up a great library of resources for yourself too. And
I'll pop a link in the chat so that you all can access that and sign up for next year. It's always in April of every year. And we've had a number of boards and staff in our region that participated in it together and then bring learnings into their management meetings, into their board meetings, et cetera. And Sally, our friend, our tech friend, said she turned on the live transcript. So hopefully that fixes the closed captioning problem. Someone, Heather asked, can you repeat the JEDI acronym?
Yeah,
Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, question mark, just a guess. That was a good guess, Heather.
yeah, that's awesome.
That's what Alexis was saying. Yes, you're right. You are now a part of the JEDI team.
Okay. Let's see, we have time for one more question.
Any other burning questions? We fixed the closed captioning. Yes.
Thank you.
One problem adjust.
Okay, so let's move on now to healthy food access programming itself. So far, we've been talking about building a welcoming co-op across various socio-demographic groups, right? Now we're going to hone in on issues of affordability. For over a decade, co-ops have been launching healthy food access programs that increase the affordability of their products. And you can see from the logos on the right, co-ops are naming them all various things. The first co-op that I believe that came out with one was City Market, and they use the Food for All branding, and that's I think that's one of the more common ones that are used for these efforts. And what's important is that your work in building a welcoming co-op is going to enhance the success of the HFA programs that you put in place. And this is because you're going to be better able to draw folks from all segments of your community who are in financial need, regardless of what socio-demographic group they belong into. And one of the things that I've learned more than anything over time is how important sharing with information with other co-ops is. And it really is true with the healthy food access programming. We do a conference call with NFCA co-ops on a quarterly basis. And the amount of information we're able to share about our programs has really allowed our co-ops to actually grow and improve over time and to really innovate. And I do want to put out here at the end of the very last slide has my contact information. And I love talking about healthy food access programs. And if anyone, and just JEDI initiatives in all. So if anyone wants to get in contact with me, please do. And I can answer any questions, share resources with you, and connect you with co-ops who are doing some really innovative work. So back, I think probably around 2010, 2011, Bonnie, NFCA worked with the Cooperative Development Fund, and they did a food co-op initiative on healthy food access. The name is escaping me right now. And it was a project that they looked at co-ops who were doing this work, and they wanted to develop a framework of those key things that co-ops need to keep in mind to ensure that people who may not be comfortable using our co-ops or hearing about our programs, how we can develop our programs in such a way that we can connect with those individuals and make our programs welcoming to them. We've already talked about collaborations with partner organizations. So they basically identified 6 factors that are really important to think about when you are developing your programs. So community partnerships is one. Educational opportunity is another. And it's not just about education on the program itself, but it's also education on using our co-ops, right? Maybe like the bulk department, and also about what we have as far as membership and ownership and, the advantages a co-op has over conventional grocery stores in terms of what we do for our members, in terms of benefits and participation. These programs give a beautiful context for educating people about our co-ops, what we do and our values and what we do out in the community. Product affordability and accessible membership options, we're going to go into in a little more depth. So I'm going to kind of skip over those for now. Inclusive marketing, making sure that our signage is friendly to people who are low income so they can easily find the products that they're better able to afford. And then infrastructure, and that's both internal and external infrastructure. Internal, such as, just how our stores are laid out, and is it easy for, let's say, people with disabilities to access products? And external could be looking at things like, how do people get to the co-op? Transportation is often an issue, and what kind of solutions might we put in place to make it easier for people to get to the co-op? Maybe we have to work with our transportation department to get a bus stop closer to the co-op, whatever that might be. So here's a resource page for you that is basically the types of healthy food access programs that kind of exist out there in co-ops right now. This is kind of a menu for you that you can choose from in establishing your own programs. And so on the left, we see the type of programs. So need-based programs and membership for all programs, we're going to be going through in a couple of minutes. So we'll look at them, we'll go through this then. But in-store educational programs to increase awareness, like classes and tours and in-store materials. SNAP incentive programs are programs to help increase the consumption of fruits and vegetables. It's based on federal programming, and we're going to do a case study in a few minutes on that as well. Collaborations with local food security organizations. These are really cool, and these really reflect our community partnerships. But a lot of co-ops do roundup programs at the registers. And I don't know if you're familiar with what those programs are, but basically it's if a person's buying groceries and there's change left, right, at the end of their transaction. So let's say I buy something and it comes to $1.57. Well, if I'm paying by cash, I might be getting 43 cents back, right? And rather than taking that 43 cents, I say, you know what, let the co-op keep that money, right? So that's what these roundup programs do. They encourage people to essentially leave their change, whether they're paying by credit card or check or cash. And the co-ops use those donations to go to local organizations that they're supporting. They also sometimes use the programs to support internal programs, such as their need-based discount programs and membership for all programs. And sometimes they'll use them as well for some kind of more national or global initiatives. Oftentimes, like when we see a flood happening, a hurricane happening, and they might do a roundup for that specific time. So that's a really good program to increase your donation pool as a co-op. And we also see a lot of other kinds of collaborations that go on, food donations and different things. A co-op basics program. Now, this is something that actually started in co-ops back around 2008, where co-ops would put like staple food items and household goods. They would kind of create a selection of those everyday items and price them below suggested retail, so that when folks came in, they would know that, okay, there's a rolled oats in the bulk department that's on basics. There's a milk, a quart of milk on basics. There's eggs on basics. So they would like pick the real common items and make these low prices on them. Well, so many co-ops were doing this program that NCG actually took the program and they branded it across all NCG co-ops. So the reason I'm explaining this is that a co-op basics program is a really great way to increase access to commonly purchased stapled items. So if your co-op is going to be part of NCG, you can use the co-op basics program. If you're not, there's no reason why a co-op can't create their own type of staple food program to really think about how can I make some of these products even more available to our members and shoppers. So let's start going into our case studies and looking at need-based discount programs. With these programs, qualifying participants receive a discount on most items in the store, including non-food items, and typically re-qualify for the program on a yearly basis. So the discount level typically ranges around 10 to 15% on items that are not on deal or sale, and the alcohol is generally excluded. And, you know, I should just put out here, because I meant to say this earlier, is that I recognize for a lot of you today, you know, here in the audience are not necessarily the people who are going to be creating these programs, right? These are going to be created once you, if you don't already have a GM, you know, are going to be created by the GM and the operational staff. One of the reasons I wanted to make this a good resource document for you is that you could pass this information on to your GMs once they come on board. And hopefully this will give information for them to be able to establish these programs within the co-op. Okay, so with need-based programs, just know that these programs are generally open to members. The qualifiers, legally, you'd need to use a multiple number of qualifiers, because federal regulations don't let you discriminate against people on federal programs. So if you only had a qualifier that was SNAP for your needs-based discount program, it means you would be excluding someone on WIC, and that's not seen as okay through the federal regulations. But the other thing is that more qualifiers actually lead to greater levels of inclusivity. So it's really helpful on that. And we're going to see this actually in action during the case study. As far as the qualifying process, typically it's an application form with yearly requalification. And there's another legal consideration that's going to be really important for operations to understand. And that's that federal regulations prohibit linking an individual to a specific federal assistance program, which means on your application forms, you can't have people checking out what qualifier they're using for your program. You can't take a qualifying document. So let's say you say for Medicaid, show me your Medicaid, you know, acceptance letter, right? You can't take that as a copy and have that on file. This is what co-ops used to do. We had to shred all those documents when we heard about this particular regulation. So basically, your co-ops don't want to do anything that links a person on these programs with the name of the federal program that they're using to qualify them. So now we're getting into the case study on Green Star's flower program. So in 2010, Green Star had, and this actually predated our diversity and equity and inclusion initiative. We had another event that happened where we had the opportunity to buy a store that was in a residential neighborhood. We were looking for a new store location for our main store because we had outgrown it. And this was in a neighborhood that was a mixed income, mixed race neighborhood. It was a neighborhood where we originally had our first storefront store. So there was a lot of sentimental feelings among long-term Green Star members about Green Star being in that neighborhood. So there was a desire to kind of move back there, right? What happened when Green Star was looking and kind of the community got wind of it, there was a lot of frustration that Green Star might be considering moving into that space, because that space had been a grocery store, a conventional grocery store. And people were saying, you know, that's not my grocery store. I don't want Green Star moving in there because, and once again, it brought up the issues that we were not diverse, that we were seen as affluent and white. And so there was a lot of controversy. The fact of the matter was that the location wasn't a good location for the store anyway, because our store was very busy and this was in a residential neighborhood, and it would bring a lot of traffic into a neighborhood where kids are playing on the street. It's, you know, it didn't have good visibility to the main thoroughfares like our current store had. And the store had kind of needed a lot of repair and was actually too big for us. So there were a lot of reasons for Green Star not to be in that store, but it brought the conversation to light about why isn't Green Star more accessible and affordable to people? And this all happened, there was a rising up at a membership meeting with members really challenging the board and operations staff to make us more affordable for people. And from that, we developed the flower program. And we got a lot of great information from the few co-ops out there that were already doing it, like City Market and Hunger Mountain. And we wanted to create a program that broke barriers and made a real difference. And so we established a 13% discount, which was a little higher than the norm at that time. And we were really concerned about non-members feeling that the equity payment was going to be a barrier to actually participating in this program. So we established a policy that for non-members, their first year of equity was covered by the co-op, and they really had a free trial membership with all other membership benefits allotted to them. Now, one question a lot of co-ops have when they're starting these programs is whether they're affordable and what truly is the impact on food access. Well, the good news is that we have consistently found that the flower program basically pays for itself because of the increased loyalty we see among our pre-existing co-op members who become members of flower, and also loyalty that's created among new members who come into the co-op through the flower program. And what we did is through the years, we've done an analysis where we've looked at people who were already members of the co-op for at least a year before getting on to flower, and looking at their purchases before they were on flower, and then the first year that they were on the flower program. And consistently, they spend more money at the co-op once they're on the flower program. And one of my favorite quotes from a member very early on in the program said that, flowers made it possible for my family to buy all its food at Green Star, or to at least stretch my food budget and stuff. So it really has a positive impact on sales and loyalty. And what we also see is that there's significant spending that ends up happening beyond SNAP sales. So for those folks who are using SNAP, they often continue shopping even if their SNAP money for the month is used up. But also by extending the program out to people beyond SNAP users, we're able to see significant program growth in flower. And so what you see between 2011 and 2018 is that the amount of sales for flower participants in 2011 was fairly equal to our EBT sales, right? It was just a 7% different. But through the years, as we added different qualifiers, we were able to grow the flower program into much more significant sales by enabling more people to come in and join and use the co-op through flower. And in 2020, something really significant happened, right? COVID. And all of a sudden, there were all these people on unemployment and losing their jobs. And we thought, wow, unemployment was never a qualifier for us before, but for a lot of reasons. But we thought, for at least temporarily, we should have unemployment on the flower program to help people through COVID. And we did that, and you can see how significant the rise in our sales through flower was by doing that. And what it taught us is that a needs-based discount program could be used to help an acute food security problem that arises in the moment. And you can use it during the duration of that crisis to help further secure food for individuals. So flower's path to greater inclusivity, as I said, was really caused by our increase in our qualifiers over time. We started with 5 original ones, and then in 2013, we added one called Healthy Food for All. It's a local subsidized CSA program that's really cool. It's a local program that runs on a grant, and there's 7 farms involved who offer CSA baskets to individuals in the program who are food insecure at a lower rate. And then the program pays the farmer for the difference. So the farmers benefit, they get a fair market value, and the participant benefits. And the great thing is it's an automatic qualifier for flour. So they also get the flour discount at Green Star. In 2016, we were opening a satellite store in our College Town neighborhood next to the Cornell University campus. And we worked with a student group and the financial aid department to define the best qualifier for students, because the students on campus were really worried about a rising food insecurity problem on the Cornell campus. And so we added Pell Grant in 2016, which got a lot of students joining the co-op and using our co-op. And they were just delighted that they were able to use Pell Grant as a qualifier. We've also added SSI and SSDI over time to increase elderly and people with disabilities being on the flour program. And then in 2017 and 2019, we established community partnerships with organizations who are working with people with who were formerly incarcerated, refugees, and a number of other folks that are underserved in our populations. And rather than saying, well, you need to be on EBT or WIC, the community partners just identify people that they know are insecure and let us know, and we get them on the flour program without being part of an actual program per se. And the reason why this is so important is what we see in this graph over time is the number of new co-op members via flour, and how when we first started out, it was around the 30% mark that the people who came into the flour program were new to the co-op. And then as we started to increase our qualifiers through these special programs, we saw the new members to the co-op number rise. And you can see how significant from the time we added these qualifiers in 2016, we rose. We had reached in 2015, 42% of our flour participants were new to the co-op. And in just 2 years, we reached 46% in 2017, and that has continued in 2018 to 2020. So really growing the program, but also growing the co-op through our needs-based discount program. And once again, our community partners were essential in spreading the word throughout the community. Our staff did a lot of outreach at various events. We went to some boards and talked to boards. With human service agencies, we did some in-service training with the Department of Social Services. There were like 70 supervisors at that training, and they learned about flour, got the materials, and then were able to communicate that to those who they were serving. We had an elderly Green Star member who got posters and put them up in senior centers. We connected with the PTA. So once again, using our community partnerships helped us spread the word and grow our program. And as I said earlier, evaluation and continual improvement is essential, and it ensures greater inclusivity and ongoing success. And one of the co-ops I think who's doing a remarkable job with this is City Market in Burlington, Vermont. About 7 years or so after they started their Food for All program, they did a survey and a focus groups with their Food for All participants. And what they found, although the 10% discount was seen as nice and helpful, it wasn't sufficient for getting higher quality, healthier food that they wanted. And bulk was rather intimidating. So they took action and they created a 2-tier discount structure. They have their 10% discount for most departments, but for bulk and produce, they established a 15% discount to improve people's access to fruits, vegetables, and whole foods. They created a bulk brochure with cooking instructions, and they did store tours which included how to shop bulk so people could feel less intimidated and more comfortable. And then they reached out to their community partners because they realized that language was a barrier. So they wanted to determine the most common languages in the Burlington area. And they chose 5 languages, and they translated their Food for All brochure and their website page for Food for All into those 5 languages. So from Burmese to Spanish, Swahili, Nepali, and Somali. So really cool work being done by City Market. So now we're gonna kind of shift gears from the need-based discount programs to membership for all programs, making equity options more affordable to members. I'm going to highlight 2 co-ops here. This particular slide is not in your slide deck. It is, you can find it on your Pathables for this workshop in a separate file because it was a last minute kind of entry into this. So I apologize for that. But anyway, a membership for all program can do one of 2 things. It can reduce equity and have people still paying an amount of equity, but just at a reduced rate, right? Or it can actually pay for the person's full equity. So with Monadnock Food Co-op, their full equity is $200. And they have an installment plan, which is a really good practice to have, just generally, to allow people to pay over time. For those with financial need, though, they have a 75% equity rate, which is paid in 3 monthly installments of $25. And the remainder is paid by their Membership for All fund. Kingston Co-op is actually going a step further, and they're creating solidarity memberships for those who self-identify as low income or BIPOC, regardless of income. And we're seeing this concept of solidarity membership, solidarity shares, as a solidarity piece to recognize the oppression that has happened for BIPOC folks throughout American history. And so these solidarity funds are honoring and really partnering in a way to be more anti-oppressive oppression in their actions. And so for Kingston, they're offering a $0 equity or 15, and the remainder can be paid by the Solidarity Fund. So I included their links for you to go, and you can see their pages on it. It's a great thing to think about. At the very bottom, I didn't mean to click back like that to this page, but at the very bottom of that page, let's go here again. NFCA also has a guide on our website for membership for all programs, so you might want to take a look at that as well. So, and lastly, SNAP incentive programs. So these are publicly or privately funded initiatives that match consumer SNAP dollars for fruits and vegetables. It was initially started in farmers markets, expanding to co-ops in some states. And since this is like, these are federal kind of monies and grant monies, there are various state requirements and grant parameters that differ based on the program, based on the state. And so what your co-op might be able to do in one state might be different than what another co-op can do in another state. The goals of the program is to basically increase fruits and vegetable consumption for low-income consumers, to increase the customer base and sales for local farmers, and keep more money in the local economy. So the question is, can my co-op have a SNAP incentives program? So the Fair Food Network is a nonprofit that actually created the national model for the produce incentives back in 2009. And their program is called Double Up, SNAP Incentives. And they run the programs in 28 states, and they support other states. So it's a great resource in terms of their website is a great resource. And they have a map which shows which states you're in. And I also tried just Googling, does your state have, so I put, does New York have a SNAP incentive program? And that's another way to find out if your state has these programs. Because as I said, for some, they don't allow it in grocery stores. Some states only allow it in farmers markets. But thankfully, a lot of states are extending that now. So Hanover Co-op has been doing this for the last 3 years, and it is a partnership with the Fair Food Network. And they had 3 focus areas for their program. Basically, they wanted the design of the program to be welcoming and easy. They wanted to cultivate an atmosphere around affordability for fresh foods and increasing awareness and access of incentive programs in a retail setting. They launched in 2018. As you can see by these stats, they've had a huge success in increasing their SNAP sales and their sales of fruits and vegetables through this program. They are now in, they have 3 stores. So it was in 2 stores the first year and 3 stores the second year. So their design, and once again, this is a great page for operations. It's like the nitty gritty. The SNAP incentives are a 50% discount and they have a maximum incentive of $10 per transaction. So the person will get up to $10 in extra fruits and vegetables. Now that maximum is due to a limitation by the grant and how much money is available. Some programs don't have maximums, some do. They budget at $20,000. It's a very simple application form. Basically, people just show their EBT card to qualify. They don't have to be a member. It's actually a great way to extend if you have a Food for All type program as well. That's how Hanover members can gain membership access. But it's really a great practice to have these and I don't even know, Bonnie, do you know, is it even legal? Do they legally have to be open to everyone? Bonnie, do you know? Because that's
I'm not sure of that.
Yeah, but anyway, good practice. So the person gets a double up card and just shows it at the register, and then they get that 50% discount up to $10 on their fruits and vegetables. And the co-op does do some tracking to report back so that they can get reimbursed for the discounts that they provide. So they wanted to cultivate an atmosphere of affordability, and they did that through intensive training with their cashiers before the launch, really talking about the benefits to the community and the co-op of these programs to increase healthy food consumption, to help local farmers stretch food budgets. They talked about the challenges facing the community and told the customer stories, really trying to get across the notion that people, you know, there are a lot of different circumstances why someone might be low income, and, you know, using the need for the program. Because sometimes there's a little bit of a policing kind of mentality that sometimes staff develop around programs such as these. And what it is really is it's about how much the staff care about the program. So they may see someone that they don't think is low income, right? And then they question that, you know, and it's because they don't want the co-op being taken advantage of. And we kind of cut through that concern through our training. So it's why it's really important to tell the customer stories of why someone may be needing to be on SNAP. And also sometimes they might feel that someone's not using the program properly. And through training, they can explain that sometimes it's just a lack of understanding for that person of how the program is run. So we just have to do a better explanation for them. So this is why kind of talking about the benefits and the challenges facing the community are really important to train our staff on, and then to do refresher trainings over time so that policing mentality doesn't come to the fore. And actually Hanover said that they really were able to curb that at the beginning of their program, which they were really happy about. There's a need to be inclusive and discreet. That was another thing that they trained on. And the goal to be welcoming, inviting, and opening. They also wanted to increase customers' access to their HFA programs, right? So they are really careful about very discreetly informing customers and members who are on their Food for All program about the Double Up program and vice versa, to try to get the most benefit to folks that they can. And this page comes thanks to our friends at Hunger Free Vermont, and they are the organization who kind of run the SNAP programs and WIC programs for Vermont. And we had a training just a few weeks ago that they showed this slide, and we asked if we could use it because it's a great slide showing how to be welcoming to SNAP users. And the great thing about SNAP is that it's like the most broad food insecurity program that we have out there. And the co-ops are such a great place for SNAP users to come to get fresh, wholesome food. So I'm not going to go through the slide. A lot of it are things we've talked about already today, but it's going to be a great resource for your staff in training. And finally, we'll sum it up. You know, what are the keys to success for healthy food access? Start visioning and planning your strategy to be a welcoming co-op now. You know, engage community partners as soon as possible, inviting those who are not at the table to the table. Embed JEDI in all you do at all levels. And don't forget, one of the most important groups in this initiative is your staff, especially your non-management staff who are coming into contact with your customers and members every day, more so than the board, more so than a lot of your upper management. And so it's really important to get them on board and listen and get their feedback on these programs. Identify the type of HFA programs, logistics, and marketing with your co-op's specific community needs in mind. Ask questions, share ideas with other co-ops and startups, and continually assess your programming and revise and evolve as needed. So that wraps up the presentation today. Once again, here's my contact information. We have about 7 minutes left. So would love to hear questions, comments. So if you want to write in chat, Bonnie, have there been any questions?
Yes, some excellent questions and comments. Some of them I've been answering. So there was a question from Nancy, which is, if someone is not a co-op member, can they participate in a flour or Food for All program? And this is an excellent question because it's been a question that's been debated among our co-ops. Is it important to tie membership to these food security needs-based discount programs? So I'll let you answer it, Alexis, and then share why it is important.
Okay, so generally most co-ops do require it to be a membership, to be a member benefit. Sometimes that's dictated by the bylaws. In my co-op, it's dictated by the bylaws. But in other co-ops, it really raises the value of the membership when our programs such as Flour are a member benefit. So it adds value, and it also raises the ability and opportunity for those participants to be an active participant in our co-ops and in the governance of the co-op, because they'll be able to vote. They'll be able to run for the board, maybe serve on a committee. So it raises that participation level. And if we're concerned about people, about the equity, that's when things like membership and for all come into play. Having good installment payment plans, having opportunities for people to join with little or no money, like at Green Star, like we have $10 or $5 installments a year, you know, kind of thing, which allows people to get in at a very low commitment rate. So basically it's about increasing the value to our members and allowing greater participation of the flower participants. Bonnie, do you have anything to add?
I would just add that through NFCA, when we were helping 13 food co-ops roll out these needs-based discount programs collectively, learning from best practices, it became really clear that it was super important to tie solidarity, these programs to membership, because the framework is solidarity, not charity, right? It's mutual aid. And it's like, oh, would we just be grocery stores giving a discount that other grocery stores wouldn't? Or is the discount tied to something bigger, which is the opportunity, reducing barriers to become a fully vested member owner in the cooperative, with the opportunity to run for the board of directors, to be an elected leader, and to represent your family and your community. So it also helps protect the co-op from violating federal anti-discrimination laws by having that program be a benefit of membership, right? It's part of your overall vision and values of the cooperative.
Great, thanks for that, Bonnie.
We've got 4 minutes left, so let's see. Alexis, you're getting some shout outs for great presentation, great information. There was a question about the Double Up grant, just if folks didn't see that, like, where does the money come from? And so I would just say the good part about the Double Up grant is, if it's in your state, take advantage of it, start partnerships now. If it's not, that's unfortunate. That's what we've been fighting for the last 5 years in our region, is for the states where it's not happening or it's not allowed in grocery stores. Some states are doing market match type programs where they're not currently eligible. Grocery stores, including cooperatives, aren't eligible to participate. So it's a big undertaking as a startup to try to do the advocacy work to get in on these programs if your state is not already participating. That being said, I think there's a push nationally with GusNIP grants and larger federal grants to get these programs rolled out in more communities. And I think the best thing to do is partner with your food security partners and anti-hunger agencies in your state and in your community that would be tapped into. Are they applying for the grant? How can you participate? I don't see any other questions.
Does anyone have a comment or something? If you want to raise your hand, we can take a few more. Or if you're doing something great at your co-op that you want to share.
Oh, Sue, I don't know how do we call on participants? Yeah, Sue, could you type in the chat? I don't think we can do audio.
Oh no, if they unmute.
I do not believe so, but Sue, can you type in your question? Oh, Sue runs the Market Match program at Local Food System Alliance. Great Alliance.
Oh, awesome.
Yes. Yeah, so get in on the Alliance early, which you'll want to do anyway, based on Alexis's stories, right? Like, right. This is, even if you're 4 years away from opening your doors, starting to have conversations with food security partners now is always a great idea, because opportunities can arise where you can situate yourself as an ally in food security and be a recognized partner before you even open your doors.
And it's something that you can communicate out to your community that you're doing this. Mm-hmm. So it actually helps as you're trying to build your membership. You know, your community hearing that you're making efforts like this is really going to help grow your membership.
Yeah. I think it's going to boot us in a minute. So
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
So are people getting?
I think
yeah.
I think